Before sunrise, like we watched yesterday night, then we slept, and then here we are.
It happens over a very short span of time, so it's not a sprawling love story or an epic drama at all. It's very small, very tight.
And very spontaneous too.
But you almost forget it's a film. You just feel like you're on this journey with them, and because their conversations are a mix of poignant, touching, other times completely inane and rambling.
It's interesting that the casting lasted so long, like around 9 months. They wanted 2 actors, especially for the role. They were both writers. That could have given something more to the story, because in the end, as we said, they improvised a lot.
It never feels, to me at least, artificial at all, even though on paper you look at it, it is some things extremely artificial, but they managed to play it off. Bonjour!
Hi, Jeff.
Welcome back to our 5th episode of the iMovie podcast, which has been renamed.
Had a big change today.
Yeah, a very important change.
Yes.
The last episode was also the iMovie podcast, but we didn't know that when we were recording. It kind of got decided in post-production.
That's true.
But yeah, now we have a new name, a new episode, and we are talking about Before Sunrise.
But see, yes, Before sunrise, we watched yesterday night, then we slept, and then here we are.
Which
Fresh.
is 139th on the Letterboxd top 250. We'd already both seen it together,
Yes.
so this was our second time for both of us.
And we watched it last time,
To watch
more than 1 year ago.
Yep.
So it was kind of fresh in a certain way.
So this film is directed by Richard Linklater. It stars Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. We will start by summarising quickly for those who haven't seen it. It is a romantic comedy. I don't know if you would call it a comedy,
I don't know either.
but it's a romance film.
Yeah.
It's set in Vienna. You have this American man who's traveling across Europe and a French girl who's coming back from a trip to Budapest, and they happen to meet on a train.
Yeah. And, they start talking to each other. One thing leads to another. He offers her to get off with him, to spend the whole night actually together around the city, because he has to take a flight back home early in the morning. And she's crazy and she accepted. But when you're traveling around, maybe you want to do it more, you're more open to this type of chances entering your life and grasping them, taking them. And so basically the whole story develops in this night before sunrise, and we happen to know the characters. We start to know the characters,
and I think it's so. Yeah, as you say, it's all set over the span of 12 hours, and it's a film that mostly consists of dialogue and. It's like almost a podcast format. It's the two characters talking, going around Vienna, encountering different people at some points, but mostly in conversational form.
Think of it like this. Jump ahead 10, 20 years, okay? And you're married. And only your marriage doesn't have that same energy that it used to have. You start to blame your husband. You start to think about all those guys you've met in your life and what might have happened if you picked up with one of them, right? Well, I'm one of those guys. That's me. So think of this as time travel from then to now to find out what you're missing out on. See, what this really could be is a gigantic favor to both you and your future husband to find out that you're not missing out on anything. I'm just as big a loser as he is, totally unmotivated, totally boring.
It happens over a very short span of time, so it's not a sprawling love story or an epic drama at all. It's very small, very tight, and
and very spontaneous too.
Yeah.
And in fact, maybe with this we can dig into giving more our impressions, but they, for example, improvised a lot in this film, and that's part of its charm, I guess. Also in the end, like it's been loved a lot. So
I mean, yeah,
there are some reasons.
This film, I guess we should start by saying whether we liked it or not, which I think we did.
We did. We liked it.
Go on.
For me personally, also yesterday night I felt the same, and it happened to me also the first time. I liked it, of course. I think it's very well made. I think it's very realistic on many levels, which is something fresh and new, I think, in this romantic type of film. So that I appreciated a lot. But at the same time, it didn't necessarily click with me 100%. I didn't feel the attachment that I thought I could have had. And this is a bit of a pity for me. But at the same time, yes, I mean, it's... in any case, you still like them a lot. I personally prefer her to him. Sometimes I find him very annoying. And maybe that's also one of the reasons why I didn't click, because I didn't fall in love with him or with her much more. I felt like they were a bit on two different levels. So, yeah, that's a bit my take into this. What about you?
No, I liked it a lot, of course. The first time I watched it, I also perceived him as being quite annoying, but I felt that less yesterday. In fact, I think especially if you compare it to other films from the 90s, I think he comes across quite well overall. And I think, no, it's the best thing about this film is that you really feel like you're with them and you know them, and after even half an hour of the film, you've already shared so much time with them that you become totally invested into their world, and you almost forget it's a film. You just feel like you're on this journey with them, and because their conversations are a mix of poignant, touching, and other times completely inane and rambling, you feel like you have a very good picture of them and very whole picture of who they are in some sense, which is so rare to have that with film characters. And I think that's something that really makes this film stand out, is how close you feel like you can get with the characters.
It's true because you see also a lot their vulnerabilities. For example, there is a scene where they go to buy some CDs, and at some point they find themselves in this room where they are listening to the music, and there is this game of look or avoided look at each other, to each other. And I think everybody can actually relate to them in this scene, and that's its power a lot. And also I feel like that's the first time that she's more vulnerable than he is, because at the beginning you feel like he's more trying to impress her, to be, cool, and she's not. She's trying to, but more subtly, but he's really more explicit in this. And I think in that sense there is a little bit of power disbalance, because she has a bit more power than he does. But in this scene, she avoids more the eye contact than he did.
I think also that scene is the first one where there's little dialogue. I mean, the whole film plays basically on the dialogue between the two characters, but this scene stands out for not having any dialogue, basically. But I think the acting in that scene is also fantastic, really. Both of the main actors are really amazing in this film. And that scene is... I think a lot of people have singled out that scene when you look at the reviews on Letterboxd, and I think for being, especially romantic, because for a scene that's full of dialogue, for a film that's full of dialogue, that one scene where it's just kind of communication by looks, but you really do feel the scene so much. It's very well made. It's very effective.
It's true. I agree very much. Throughout the whole film, let's say you have moments in which you understand and there is this connection, but at the same time, we're a bit. It's like when your hands sweat a bit because it's new, you are excited, you're a bit afraid, you don't know, you're uncertain, especially also they are 20 years old around. So that also makes even more sense. Also, for what I was saying before, that sometimes I find him very annoying. I think it makes sense also you're starting to develop your personality and you're experimenting and understanding what works for you, what doesn't, but you have a model that you have to aspire to. And so...
But I think for me, when you talked about finding him annoying, I think I can find him annoying, but what was different for me this time is it didn't distract from my experience of the film, because I'm not going to the film like hoping necessarily to, it's not like I'm the one who has to date him. I can appreciate his story without necessarily approving of everything of him, and I think the film is still effective enough and he's very good enough to make you want the story. I mean, you want them to end up together and you want them to be able to stay longer together, and that's still effectively shown, even if in some moments you can find. I mean, so I think that's my.
I think he's as an actor, he's very good, because I think that's the role that he has to interpret. But no, for me, it's a bit distracting because I think like if I was her, and because I'm in the end, I'm watching the film and I want to be her. And sometimes I'm like, oh, please, you deserve much better. And other times, no, but in some moments, so much. Like,
it's the 90s, so you have to bear in mind.
Okay.
Like, I know
I can bear it in mind.
I'm taking in mind the different time context, but I think for the 90s, that's like an exceptionally non-toxic man, and especially depicted in this type of film.
Yes, absolutely, it's true. And he appreciates her for who she is, and she's a complete character. I mean, she's a person. She's not just a little, element that is functional to the story. No. She's a complete character, and in this regard, I would like to say, in fact, the director hired a co-writer for the script with whom he already worked, and she's a female, this co-writer, so that they could have the complexity of both the two main characters. And I think that's very good, and that's, you can clearly see, to be honest, because she's really like a person. She's not like she gives value to what she thinks, and she's not afraid to show it. So also in that sense, maybe she is a strong character, and she's out of the blue. Or not out of the blue, but a bit of an exception, maybe in the 90s context, especially of the romantic films. And he is too, but much less powerful. Even if, I don't know, I think it's also nice, to be honest, to play with the standards and the stereotypes and also the breaking down of them, also because she sometimes does him. By the way, I didn't really like when, for example, the whole speech you had after the fortune teller came to us, and I feel like you were really not understanding the situation, and you were just a bit of a selfish guy, wanted all the attentions, and that I liked, because I thought the same. Not really the same, but I thought, okay, really now he's mansplaining to her, like she didn't know that the fortune tellers that go around are making up most of the things. Thank you. Wow, I never heard of something like that. And I thought, really, you're telling me all these things and you want to impress me? No, you're impressing me the other way around. So that's also something that for me was a bit meh. But then she told him off, and so that I was super happy, and I could relate in a certain way, even if maybe wouldn't do that. But since they created this complicity and this truth dialogue between each other, I think it worked very, and honest honest dialogue. So I think that worked very much.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the format of the film, as I say, is so unique because it's set over such a short time and you spend so much time with these characters and you really have every insight into their discussions, and because they end up talking about their past and talking about their interests and their dreams, you, in what's quite a short film, you feel like these characters are very rounded, much more than even some whole series of films or some whole TV shows managed to do. You really feel like these characters are rounded and written and real people with complexities also that you're yet to discover. But I was also thinking about how impressive it is, the amount of long takes in this film where you have maybe, 10-minute scenes, between 5 and 10 minutes maybe, of them having these flowing conversations in which really they impeccably perform the role of two people who are just getting to know each other. And it's all shot in one take. There's one scene on the tram near the beginning where they have this whole game of asking each other questions, and it's all shot in one take, and it goes on for a while, and it's very, very impressive.
It's true.
There it is.
And again, like, that's also very realistic because, okay, you want to know each other, but also there is a little embarrassment or awkwardness. So what do? You make up a game. You just play a game, which is very simple but very effective. You're both more relaxed. I don't know. It's like it's something that really, like, a 20 years old would come up with. And it's true in this beautiful long shot, and you're with them in the end. You really are.
My friend Emma had a big crush on him. So one day I was cutting, across field back to my room, and he came walking up beside me. And I told him, you should date Emma because she has a big crush on you. And he turned to me and said, well, that's too bad, because I have a big crush on you. So, yeah, it really scared the hell out of me because I thought he was so fine.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
We went through Vienna last night, basically.
And I also think that it feels quite modern in some. For a film that came out in the mid-90s, it feels modern in the ideal of romance that's shown in some regards, in that somehow I think this could still be a dream today.
Yes.
With some differences, but it's not a film that's very specifically of its time and has to be perceived in that way. I think I'm absolutely sure that, like, a lot of people going Interrailing who've seen this film have, like, somehow the dream of that happening to them. I've never been Interrailing, but I imagine that that's like if you've seen that film, you've been Interrailing, that's obviously going to be in the back of your mind.
Yeah, or even if you haven't gone Interrailing, but you've seen this film, you want to go Interrailing and you want the same thing to happen. Maybe you are even more risky, you dare more once you go after having seen this film when you go Interrailing. Because it's true, like, as he says at the beginning, you will dream about this moment. You think about what would have happened if I would have gone down with him, if I would have spent the whole night with him. And that's true, because you idealize, your fantasies go, and in the end we're all a bit deep romantic. So, like, hopeless romantic people. So you think about that, you dream about that.
I think, everyone's got something they can relate to on some level, I think, in this film, whether it's just one scene or some feelings of the characters are feeling, but everyone can tie something to themselves based on what happens in the film. And I also think that because the characters always manage to make extremely fluid and kind of philosophical points and have all these profound conversations that at times can almost feel a bit manufactured for the film and a bit fake because in the end they're coming up with all this great stuff in what's meant to be a short span of time, but actually it has to be the case, I think. And they just about get away with it by having a mix of different conversations, different topics and different situations, so that you know, if you had one or two more scenes of one type where they go into like philosophy or you know, kind of existentialism and stuff, you might start to think, okay, but they stop feeling like real people. But the balance is just right where they have also some vulnerabilities and some gaps and some uncertainties that you can still buy into them as real people. And yeah, and you also understand that because it's a film, some things have to be exaggerated. And it never feels like, to me at least, artificial at all. Even though on paper you look at it, it's some things extremely artificial, but they manage to play it off.
It's true, no, exactly. Yes, because also, for example, I read that Julie Delpy, she said that for her the script at the beginning was a bit too mechanical, or not mechanical, but like not romantic enough. And so she tried a bit to compensate, and the actors actually find themselves very good in this role with each other. And so you see, now the magic comes out, and they are spontaneously more, even if they know what I have to say, but they say it as if they were the characters. There is a lot of themselves, and also of the director, because it all starts from the same basically thing, the same story of the director. So he, in the past, like actually not many years before, it was like 5 years before
He lived
6 years before the...
he lived a similar story.
Exactly. Before the films came out, yes, exactly. He had the same story, even if it was in the US. And he said, I want to write about it. But then, sad story, this woman died before the film came out, so she doesn't know. And that's a big pity. But in general, it's not, you feel that it's grounded in a reality, because it's so full of desire and dreams.
Yeah.
You know, you fantasize about this. This is a fantasy somehow, a romantic fantasy that is happening for real. So you're like, wow, this is happening to me. And they feel that. You feel that through them. And then at the end they say, okay, it would be great if they would just stay in this bubble and remains like perfect. We're not touching it. It's like a beautiful memory that we would bring with us. But then you want to go on. You are hopeless romantic. You want to go on. And so they decided. And this would have been the case. But we don't spoiler, because there is another episode.
The next film.
Yeah. Because before Sunset is also in the top 250.
Yeah, it's actually higher rated than the first. But I want to say also I think I've absolutely got a cynical mindset when it comes to romance films in general. It's very rare that I like romantic films.
See.
I think it depends, very rare, but I think the majority of romantic films absolutely don't enjoy it at all. But this one, I have to say, scene after scene, it's just brilliant. I think it's really... Yeah, it's really effective. I was taking notes while watching the film, and about 5 times I've written, oh, this scene is great. You know, the recording booth scene is great. The scene where they talk to a poet and he kind of improvises a poem for them is completely great. And maybe most of all, the scene where they both pretend to be on the phone to some of their friends from home is very, very brilliant. I mean, it's really great. And it's got this balance of occasional corniness, which is needed, because also, like in every real relationship, there's some corniness, you know, but also a lot of honesty, and it feels to me like more relatable than, not relatable even necessarily personally, but the way in which romance is idealized and shown is in a much more relatable and desirable way than the majority of, let's say, the majority of romantic films.
Absolutely.
Ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine. Ring.
Hi, dude. What's up?
Hey, Frank, how you been? Glad you're home.
But also, okay, the majority maybe is very unlikely to happen. So these romances in the rom-com films are very idealized, and it's more like, yes, a fantasy that will never happen for sure.
Yeah.
When this one is a fantasy that could actually happen, and in any case, we want you to think it can happen because it happened. It happened to the director, so.
But I think it's not. It's that idea of the fantasy, but it's not elevated much beyond reality in some senses. You know, the end of the film, which could be absolutely tragic in some senses and being like this emotional goodbye, is actually somewhat underplayed, but it still feels like very painful and real because it's almost the fact that it's underplayed and so anticlimactic and with a lack of anticlimactic maybe is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. It's not a big ending at all. It's just
big ending. Bad, more or less, though, because in the end they are like, okay, no, sorry, I want to see you again. Please see you again. Okay. And they play and they discuss when, and then they kiss passionately and they say, okay, bye, goodbye. Yeah. So a bit, I think it's as it would be. Okay, you spend the whole night, so you are already like falling a bit in love with each other. You want to move on, so you want to go on. You don't want to leave it. You want to keep seeing each other, and all the passion comes out.
Yeah, and there's so many points where, you know, they talk about the time running out, and they say, "Oh, but all we'll be able to think about is the time running out." And from that point on, us, the viewer, are in the same boat, and all we can think about is their time running out. And there's, you know, we're really on the trip with them, and when they say goodbye, we're also saying goodbye to them, and that's because we feel like we know them so well, or at least we know them as well as they know each other, because they've only just met, they've only just had these interactions with each other, and it's the beginning for us too. And I think that's actually maybe part of what the film makes the film great, is that the time where they first meet and all the time they spend together we've seen, whereas there's nothing really that they've done together off screen, maybe a few moments, but everything of their relationship somehow we've shared, and therefore we've seen it blossom quickly in this way that, you know, it's not like a sprawling thing over a few years and a romance that develops into marriage or whatever, like many films show. It's something much more short term, but we share everything of it, and therefore we feel more involved somehow. And I think that's probably one of the reasons it's touched so many people. So.
Yeah. Another thing that we said the first time that we watched it, though, it was imagine watching it when you're not in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because that's also probably a bit different experience. Even if it's a beginning of a story, so anyone can relate. But maybe if you are, I don't know, if you watch it after
I'm not sure anyone can relate.
At least
with the feelings, yes, not with the.
With the actual, I can't even, we didn't meet in this way, and I never met someone in this way. But yeah, with the feelings. So it can be a different experience, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
For now, that's our experience. And I wanted to add also onto something that, these things that you were saying about we are with them. We are with them also with the hopes and fears, especially at the end when we're like, okay, they gave each other this date where they will meet again in the same place at the same time. I don't know the time, but the same place, the same day. And we both hope that they will do that. But do we know that? We're sure? Are we sure? Not really. We don't know. And I think also for this reason, it's hard to start the second film. We also are full of hopes to say that, of course, they're going to meet again on that date. But then at the same time, we think, okay, but they are, I don't know, it can also happen that they won't. We know that there is a second film. I don't know if they knew it at the time. Maybe not.
It kind of sets up for a second film in some regard.
Yes, but it's true, because I watched an interview to Ethan Hawke, and he said, let's say that he was doing in real life something that inspired. Spoiler. He was like presenting one of his books as a writer, and this inspired the second film. And he said, "You know what? We could do about that," and they meet in this way.
Yeah.
End of the spoiler.
It also wouldn't be a problem if there weren't a second film, I think. It's a
I
film
agree.
that also works internally,
Absolutely.
absolutely. It doesn't need a sequel.
300%.
We'll come on to the sequel in another episode, but I don't think it's not at all like essential part of the
No.
film. It's not like it's a cliffhanger that leaves you on edge. You can absolutely enjoy this film.
Absolutely.
Without-
No, somehow this open ending can also is sensible in itself. So I think that's very good. And I just thought about this because of the spoiler I said before. It's interesting that the casting lasted so long, like around 9 months, because they wanted 2 actors that were, of course, like perfect for the role, and they were both writers, so that could have given like something more to the story, because in the end, as we said, like they improvised a lot, so certain dialogues were spontaneous, and in the end, in the second and third film, she's for sure part of a co-writer, but he's too.
I think
They're both co-writers. So, like it's even more relatable and magic and well done, I think.
Yeah,
Personally.
and it's interesting that yesterday we were reading about Richard Linklater, and he talked about Raging Bull as one of his inspirations.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was thinking, it's interesting, I don't know if that mode of dialogue that feels flowing, that feels like it's not written, but it's just people talking to each other, because that's, for me, Scorsese is the father of that mode of dialogue. All his films feel so conversational.
But you're crazy to even think about something like that. I mean, he's a fucking heavyweight or a middleweight. It's impossible. It'll never happen, so why go crazy thinking about it? It's not normal.
Do me a favor. I want you to hit me in the face.
What?
I want you to hit me in the face.
Whether it's Goodfellas or Raging Bull or King of Comedy, it doesn't feel like lines have been written. It's more like characters speaking over each other. And this improvisational tone is very clearly also present here. It's a very different register, but it's...
Yeah.
And you know what? So another thing that I think I really like about this film is its imperfection, and that it's not the perfect love story. Neither of the characters are perfect,
It's
as
true.
we said. And I think that's, in fact, it's that very imperfection, the fact that maybe he's not even that great a guy, or, and even with her, for sure, you can find some issues.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
And with the story, and that's, I think, but that's part of the charm, and that actually it makes it more attainable, because it's more like real somehow. It's like, oh, these could be real people, and therefore we're not so far away. They're not like absolute ideals of perfection,
Yeah, on that I very much agree. Yeah, it's true. And sure, yeah, absolutely. You can find some not perfect elements in her. Even like sometimes she plays a bit too much the role of I'm cool and I'm I know something more than you every time.
Yeah, but
She is cool and she knows something
it
more.
feels
than him.
relatable in any case.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like, they're young. It's even more relatable for this, I think. Yes, I agree. And yeah.
Yeah, I think we've
I don't know
covered
if, yes.
a lot of stuff.
I want to have just a comment, which is the first time they kiss. It was so awkward to see. I can imagine being that big. And then, again, one thing that I love is that when they were taking the call with the fan, and that scene is true, that scene is beautiful. And she was like talking to her imaginary friend. And she was like, he kisses like an adolescent, like a teenager. And she's like, what? And she was
You
like,
can kind of see it in the scene. Though.
we kissed. Yeah, exactly, because he's like so
But I still think it's good.
following what, of course, like if these are more or less your first experiences, of course, like you try to play cool because he wants to be cool. But it's that trying too hard that makes it so awkward. And in the end, it was her like taking the situation in hands and kissing him. But I like also that, like as you were saying, they are honest to each other, and you know, they were saying it was an honest dialogue, the one at the cafe with the fake phones, and where they were saying not only the beautiful things but also some things that were a bit I don't know, they became beautiful because of their possibility to communicate it to communicate them to each other. I also like the imperfections that make the situation beautiful and magical, and also they make you feel, for example, okay, if they were both perfect, it would be a bit uncomfortable because okay, I have to always say like the expectation of the other person are very high, and I have to, you know, like achieve these high expectations. So it's a lot of pressure. In these cases, there is always the pressure because of course you want to impress the other person, but at the same time, you're even more relaxed and you know that you can say some stupid things, or you can show even yourself for who you are, which sometimes I think he did when they were walking, and he was like, okay, this is my point. Actually, I think these things are bullshit, or you know, even like some maybe more vulnerable parts of I don't know, like for example, I like to write some things. I don't know, he didn't say that, but you know, like maybe sharing some personal and intimate thoughts, and that's beautiful. Another thing, in some moments, Julia Delpy, or better said, actually Céline, she reminds me so much of Phoebe Buffay. Friends. And so much, some elements are so there. The way to speak, the way to, you know, be sometimes out of the world.
Yeah, but she's much cooler than...
Much cool. She's, as we said yesterday, like, it's not a comedy, so she's more grounded in reality. Celine, while Phoebe is from another planet, she wouldn't exist in real life. But still, there are some elements, I think they could be almost the same character, but into different genres of film, cinematic production. But yes, that's what I wanted to say, my 2 cents.
Yeah, so I guess that's basically it. I think I at least am very happy with this film being placed in the top 250.
Yes.
It's not even in the top 100, but I think it's such a... Yeah, absolutely deserves it, I think. I really...
Yes, it deserves it. I don't know if the second is in the 100. I don't think so.
I think it's higher than this one, though. I don't know where it is exactly, but... I
think I agree. But yeah, we talk about it in the next episode.
Yes.
I mean, in the second part, then I don't know if it will be the next episode, maybe. We'll see. In any case, now you got used to our faces.
Yes.
You have to keep getting used to them. If you have any recommendation, please share them with us. Any feedback, share them with us.
Any thoughts about the film,
absolutely.
Share them with us. You can follow us.
Some anecdotes. Yeah.
On Spotify, on Instagram. The links will be in the description.
Yeah, exactly.
The
comment section will be open.
Yes.
And yeah.
That's it. Bye.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.